I had this old wooden stool sitting around, and while I love the rustic wood of it, I thought it could have just do with a pop of colour. So I decided to apply the new Sapphire Sonata Transfer by Dixie Belle Paint over the top. These are really great ways to embellish your furniture, whether it's raw wood or painted or glass or anything really. I applied the transfer onto the top of my stool and I smoothed it down, and once I was happy with the placement, I used the applicator stick to apply pressure and rub, which would then transfer the transfer onto the wooden stool. And once I was happy that I had completely rubbed on all of my transfer, I took off the backing sheet and just gave it a little smooth down with my hand, just to make sure that it was all firmly secured to the surface of the stool. I used some scissors just to get in there in the middle and remove all of the excess transfer. I gave the stool and the transfer a gentle sand down with 120 grit sandpaper, and this was just to give it a very rustic, faded aged kind of look. So I didn't want the transfer to look totally perfect on top of the stool because the stool's already quite rustic. I wanted to make sure the transfer looked rustic as well. I then used Big Mama's butter to seal my transfer, but not only that, Big Mama's butter is a great wax for also nourishing and moisturising wood. So not only is this going to make sure my transfer is firmly in place, I also am going to be confident that it's going to condition my wood as well. But make sure you watch to the end so that you can see the final look and how I put a lot of these craft projects together for a home decor style. Wine bottles can make excellent home decor craft projects, and this one was no exception. So I started with Dixie Belle's Bonding Boss, which has a bonding primer and adhesive primer joined together, all in one amazing product to use. I've taken the sticky labels off the wine bottle obviously, but don't worry if there's a little bit left behind. That's kind of stubborn to come off because this is going to be a really textured look. After applying 2 coats of Bonding Boss, which is going to help my painted deer, I then went in with the chocolate chalk mineral paint and a chip brush. And what I did is I just stippled this onto the wine bottle, so that just means I just did a little bit of dabbing, and this creates really excellent texture. For my second coat of paint, I used the Weeping Willow chalk mineral paint and a French tip brush. I did the same stippling action where I was just patting on the paint, and the reason I'm using the French tip brush is just because it gives me a very slightly different texture because of the pointed edge, but any natural bristle brush would be fine. Just keep in mind that this can be quite harsh to your brush bristles. Don't be afraid to get a little bit heavy with the paint as well. As I said before, it's going to be really textured, so you can kind of just go in there and have a really good play with the paint. While the paint was still wet, I then began to spray with just plain water. So this technique is called wet distressing, and what it does is create a really cool distress look and a little bit more of an authentic one. So after I had sprayed my water bottle, I went and got a rag and just dabbed it, and hopefully you can see now that it's just creating this very rustic texture, and it's starting to make it look really old. Next, to add a bit more interest to my painted wine bottle, I used one of the new Dixie Belle Water Slide Transfers Baroque Swirls. You take off the front sheet of these transfers, like I am doing here, and then you apply it to your furniture piece or home decor piece face down, so that the colour is going to be transferred over onto your piece and the grey is on the outside. So I wrapped it around my bottle, and then I sprayed a little bit of water over the top. I then got a rag and just started to rub the transfer. So the idea is that the water will cause the transfer, and the rubbing also will cause the transfer to be applied to the bottle. I don't know if you ever had those tattoos as a kid where you know, those fake tattoos where you would apply one to your arm and wet it, and then suddenly you're like, whoa, look, mum, I've got a tattoo. It's kind of, you know, the similar idea. Obviously, they're much prettier though, and I'm really excited for the way this one's going to turn out. These paper sheets are quite tough, so don't worry if a little bit of paper starts to, you know, come off. That's absolutely fine. Sometimes, you know, you might need to just put a little bit more pressure on depending on how awkward your piece is. I've chosen quite an awkward piece for this because of the curves. You know, I'm having to curve it around, but it's absolutely fine. It will work a lot better on a flatter surface, but you can get those intricate details of the transfer to work on more complicated pieces like this as well. Once you're happy that it's all transferred on, just peel that paper right off. As you go along, you might need to find that you have to do an extra little bit of ribbon, which is totally fine. I'm working in sections here, so I'm just sort of lifting a little bit up at a time just to make sure that it's transferred over, and then working on the next section, and so on and so on. After I had applied my transfer to the bottle, I then just went in with my damp rag and I just gave it a little tap, and this is just to make sure that it had definitely secured well to the wine bottle. I definitely have a warm and cozy idea, kind of home decor thing in mind for this bottle, so make sure you stay to the end to see that and see how I combine it with the other craft projects. Next up is a watering can I've had for a while that I've always found quite ugly, and I started this by giving it 2 layers of the bonding boss, and this is just going to act again as an adhesive primer. Next up, I went in with Dixie Belle's Chalk Mineral Paint Palmetto, which is a lovely deep rich green, and a chip brush which is going to give me some really cool scratchy texture. I then began painting the palmetto in different directions, just getting like quite playful with it, and I wasn't at all worrying about being perfect here. I was going in with different amounts of paint and just having a play really. I covered a fair amount of the watering can in that, and then decided to go with the Chalk Mineral Paint colour Mermaid Tail, and using another chip brush I started using the same technique, just swishing my brush around in different directions and going over the top of the palmetto, and the idea is to create another rustic look here. I'm also alternating between the palmetto and the mermaid tail, so just think about something that might have been set out in the garden for a while and has just gotten really weathered, and that's kind of what I'm aiming for. Once that had dried, I applied a little bit of the Weeping Willow over the top, doing that scratchy up and down, left and right texture again. I'm just thinking of something that, again, like might have been painted in a few layers and then has sat in the garden and it's just become really distressed. Then I added a little bit of the copper patina paint, and I really added this in very rough random places. I finished the watering can by spraying it with the yellow patina paint spray. I put it in a water mister bottle because I wanted more of a mist than a really big thick spray, but this is just going to help the copper look really kind of industrial and oxidized, but it looks kind of crazy right now, but it does dry a little bit more subtle. My final craft project was a little plant pot, and again I used the bond emboss because it was a very slippery surface and I wanted to be sure that my paint was going to adhere to that. I then applied one of the new Dixie Belle Silk Mineral Paint colours, which is Yellowstone, followed by a silkscreen stencil called Filigree and a colour called, and I can never pronounce this, it's a new one, Sequoia, I'm going to say. I believe it's a national park in America, so I apologise probably for the mispronunciation of this. And yeah, so I went in with this lovely burnt red orange colour over the top with the silkscreen stencil, and silkscreen stencils are great because they stick to whatever it is that you're painting and you don't get any bleed through at all with them. Like literally you just apply your paint and you remove the sticker and voila, your piece has been stenciled perfectly usually. However, I am going in kind of roughly with this. I'm stippling and making it more textured in some areas, and that's just because I love that distressed look and I'm wanting a very kind of rustic distressed look for this overall finished home decor style that I'm going for. So then I take it off, and I will need to do a little bit more to finish the piece, but this just looks perfect. And here's how they all look finished. I managed to create a very cute little plant pot as well as an oldie worldy candle holder with my wine bottle, and I just love that these little makeovers could combine to create a very cool little rustic space in my home. Let me know in the comments which one was your favourite makeover today.